Good evening to you all, and welcome. Welcome to Nyack College. For those of you who are joining us possibly for the first time or for a return visit, we're glad that you're here, and we are looking forward to hearing our fine poet this evening. Thank you, students, as well, for being here. I see all the way back there in various places. I'm very appreciative to Professor Brad McDuffie for the work that he does in making friends and inviting them to join us and to share their creative work. As many of you know, that we have our fall series, and at that point we highlight our own faculty, but in the spring it's been our tradition to invite those from the area to share their work, and that is a highlight for us. I know that some of you, this may be your first or your second poetry reading. For others, you've been regulars over the years. But it is an opportunity that you may not always have, and so we are pleased to invite poets to Nyack. And so I think I'm going to say no more than invite Brad McDuffie to come up here and make the introductions.
Welcome. It's a good mic. Okay, just going to use that. Welcome to the poetry reading featuring Rosanna Warren. We want to celebrate that wonderful tradition of turning off our cell phones at this time. Please put all your cell phones away. We're honored and privileged to have Rosanna Warren back on the hillside to read for us tonight, and I'm distinctly honored to introduce her. Rosanna Warren teaches at Boston University, where she is Emma Ann McLaughlin Metcalf Professor of the Humanities. Her volumes of poetry include Snow Day, Each Leaf Shines Separate, Stained Glass, Departure, and her forthcoming collection, which she'll be reading from mostly tonight, Ghost in a Red Hat. Among her other publications, she has also written a book of criticism entitled Fables of the Self, Studies in Lyric Poetry. Her numerous awards include the Pushcart Prize and the awards from the American Academy of the Arts and Letters and the Academy of American Letters. I recently had the opportunity to exchange a few emails with Rosanna and listen to her thoughts about her craft. She's one of the few poets that has made me sit up straighter and called me to attention through the approach she takes to her work. As she once said in an interview with the Kenyon Review, "For me, there is no interesting art that doesn't have a potent formal sense and also a powerful disruptive sense. I look for that in art." The other night, as I was trying to communicate something about her approach to craft, or just the approach to craft in general, to my students, I recalled something Rosanna had said to me about the reason she does not paint anymore, because painting would require 10 hours a day of attention to the canvas. Having said this, I have only one last thing to share with you, which I hope will serve as a type of guide tonight for us as she reads. Rosanna once said in the same interview with the Kenyon Review, "Poems are little theaters, little symbolic theaters, where you can take experimental soundings about structure and explosion and try to make them ethical soundings. That is why I'm driven to write poems." Please welcome Rosanna Warren.
And an honor to be here. And I have to say that Brad McDuffie is a superb reader of poetry. I benefited greatly from his perceptive and insightful readings. As he said, I'm just looking at my watch so I don't bore you all terribly. Careful about this. I don't believe in long poetry readings. Sending your audience to a coma is not a good idea. Better a haiku than an epic delivered orally. I will read mostly from this new book and then a few new poems that have been written since the book. So, to begin with, this book in a way is a ghost story. The title is Ghost in a Red Hat, and the first poem is about a ghost, and the last poem in the book is about a different ghost. I'm starting with the first ghost. Mediterranean. When she disappeared on the path ahead of me, I leaned against a twisted oak. All I saw was evening light where she had been, gold dust light where a moment before, and 38 years before that, my substantial mother strode before me in straw hat, bathing suit, and loose flapping shirt. Every summer afternoon, her knapsack light across her back, her step in sandals firm on the stony path as we returned from the beach. And I mulled small rebellions and observed the dwarfish cork trees with their pocky bark, the wind-rustled oaks with arms akimbo, while shafts of sea light stabbed down between the trunks. There was something I wanted to say at the age of 12, some question she hadn't answered. And yesterday, so clearly seeing her pace before me, it rose again to the tip of my tongue. And the mystery was not that she walked there 10 years after her death, but that she vanished and let twilight take her place. This book, not every page, but essentially in a progress to try to give you a feel for the range of poems in here. This is a book which contains some very personal, by which I don't always mean autobiographical, but intimate poems, and also poems that I think of as political, general, more objective, and the juxtaposition is important to me. This poem, Aftermath, is from a series of elegies from my friend, the writer Deborah Tall, who died of breast cancer a few years ago, and it has an epigraph from one of Deborah's poems. The poem is called Aftermath. Dawn, the moment it was over. Deborah Tall. It was that last euphoric summer between one chemo and another, when you looked out your kitchen window and saw the doe standing at the edge of your lawn where the thicket gathers, autumn olive, buckthorn, forsythia, dogwood. And when you stepped outside, the doe stayed still and looked in your eyes, you thought, with a companionable, complicit question, and didn't run. You were lightheaded. The doe lowered her nose to shove at the small bundle at her feet, folded up like an awkward deck chair, till then invisible in its hollow of grass. She had just given birth. The fawn couldn't stand, but raised its too large head to gaze at you. You were, as you said, already more or less posthumous. You took each other in, one of you before, the other beyond fear. Two creatures, side effects on one another, headed in opposite directions. One called Porta Portese, which is the name of the flea market in Rome, I wrote it just before the markets crashed in 2008, but after they crashed I thought this was weird, as you might see from the poem. And as I tell my Italian friends, it's not really about Rome, it's about Wall Street, so that they wouldn't be offended, my Italian friends. Porta Portese. If it once gleamed, if it ticked, if it buzzed, if it oiled eternal youth, if it whispered on an old tape with the sexual lure of infinite cash, if it said, I am your private castle and you are a queen, if it lit 1,000 bulbs, if it shaved 1,000 hairs, if it declared God loves you, if it promised to cure hair lips, eczema, scabies, rage, if it clipped hangnails, if it delivered proverbs, if it hugged the ass, it's laid out on on a collapsible table or a mat on asphalt. Money will change hands. Money will change us all. Change gypsies, professors, Nigerian whores, limping children, drugged babies, iPodded teens, Somali refugees, artists in drag, illegal Albanians, cruising Poles. We said one world. We said, isn't my money good enough for you? Switchblade, switch banks. The Cloaca Maxima accepts all currencies. The Tiber leaks yellow between its legs. Venereal, venerable, duty-free, luxurious, silken, rippling, classical waves. Sold and soldered, solved, reflected here. And some of this book is concerned with war, like the Trojan War, and like more recent wars. In this poem, Fire, there's a reference to Mutanabi Street, which is the street in Baghdad where all the booksellers traditionally have had their shops. Fire. It would take a voodoo skull, one eye darkened, one candle lit, to see into these pictures. Who set that fire? Who piled that cliff of smoke? The newsprint is jaundiced, ripped at the edge. I set that fire. I piled that bombastic, mountaining smoke. I mound it up every night, and I don't drag anyone out. The bodies are stiff, like little T-squares. It's not clear what geometry problem they solve. The ditch is a rampart. The live ones, turbaned, stand on the upper rim. Bombed trucks burn rectangularly. The books on Mutanabi Street make a chunky oatmeal mush. This world, the same for all, was shaped by no god or man, but always was and will be an everlasting fire, said Heraclitus. And the child in the charred room reaches out to touch the wall. The furniture's burned, his father shot. The mirror reflects only the camera flash. We found fire in our souls before we stole it from heaven. Now we are the lords of light, and the dark room is ours. And there's a kind of little clot of catastrophes in this book. This one I think you'll recognize as New Orleans, where my daughter went down and built houses for 6 months after Katrina, and I went down and helped her just a little for a few days after. The highway straight to the end of the world skims past a ruined mall. Kmart with roof stove in. Acres of parking lots where weeds judder through cracks. Police station smashed, but McDonald's still sells shocked grease. In the concrete barracks nursing home, all the old ones drowned, trapped in metal beds. A pink-flounced girl floated for a week in sludge, legs apart, face down. Write an inventory, make an index, stutter a psalm. Raw sewage piped from trailers chokes the bayou. And I am thinking how to say and, or whether and is the word for the way beyond the swamp. The ghosts of pines and skeletal cypresses march for miles in haze. And how I lost count of slab after cement slab where bungalows used to stand. Under the bridge in a swarm of water hyacinths, alligators doze. Draw a map of where X's brother hanged himself, where Y died of diabetes when the drugs ran out, and an invisible map of smoke patterns in the lungs of the girl who hammers sheetrock and gesso's cracks. Yesterday's eggs and oatmeal congeal on stacked plates. The house rises from moldy rubble and waist-high weeds. At night in the French Quarter, at the corner of Bourbon and Bienville, two boys gargle love songs in the red light tide, sluicing from barroom windows into the street. And as wind stoops to seize hard kisses from the current, The tunes ride guitar riffs in updrafts over the roofs, across the delirium tremens river toward the Gulf, where small waves lip the horizon and sky stays mute. These poems. This poem is called Ocular, and I preface it by saying, don't believe everything you hear in a poem. Even a literary critic once, when this poem was published in a magazine, wrote to me wrote about it as if it were all autobiographical. And I said, you know, you're a sophisticated reader. You know that poetry is fiction, a lot of it. Fiction, people make things up. And he said, yeah, actually, if you'd done all those things in that poem, you'd be dead now. Ocular. So damp, the pages of novels curl up like vine leaves. The stories smear. In the metro this morning, a man was scraping a poster from the wall. All the promised felicity hung in shreds. My eye is swollen, purple. I can't read, near or far. My childhood is far. I slept on a naked mattress the pit bull ripped. It reeked of smoke. Needles littered the floor. I starved myself. I admired my delicate ribs, the leaves of a petrified prehistoric fern. I was prehistoric. My eye teeth turned to fangs. Day marched in, carrying night on his shoulders, a wizened old man. I preferred night. Come to me, I said. I'll kiss you anyway, even if you're ancient and I'm blind and bruised. We'll laugh. We'll be the book of Revelation. I'll wear lingerie from the crypt, and we'll eat at the Loveless Cafe, where biscuits steam and no one spits in the jam. That was years ago. Night's tired now. We've worn each other out. We hardly meet, but I still have one good eye. And when I squint, you wouldn't believe what I see. I find life pretty scary, so I think poems should respond to that. Man in stream. You stand in the brook, mud smearing your forearms, a bloodied mosquito on your brow, your yellow t-shirt dampened to your chest, as the current flees between your legs, amber verdigris, unraveling today's story, last night's travail. You stare at the father beaver, eye to eye, but he outstares you, you who trespass in his world, who have, however unwilling, yanked out his fort, stick by tooth-gnarled, mud-clabbered stick, though you whistle vespers to the wood thrush and trace flame flicker in the grain of yellow birch. Death outpaces us. Upended roots of fallen trees still cling to moss-furred granite. Lichen smolders on wood rot. Fungus trails in wisps. I wanted a day with cracks to let the godlight in. The forest is always a nocturne, but it gleams. The birch tree tosses its change from palm to palm. And we who unmake are ourselves unmade. If we know, if only we know, how to give ourselves in this untendered light. I don't know if any of you have tried to rip out a beaver dam. It's an amazing experience. The beavers are brilliant architects, and it is hard work. They've cemented those sticks in there with mud and stone, and quite an exercise. I have a lot of respect for beavers. This poem is called 42nd Street, and I wrote it in the fall of 2008 when I lived in New York, and I was working every day at the New York Public Library writing and doing research on 42nd Street in Manhattan. And it was an amazing time. I don't know if any of you were living in New York City when the markets crashed, but I walked every day 45 minutes to get to the library past collapsing brokerage houses and banks that were, Merrill Lynch collapsing, Bear Stearns collapsing, and remember seeing these gray-faced financial people leaning against walls. An interesting time. 42nd Street. The sidewalk gapes open down dark basement stairs. You could fall there among kegs and cardboard cartons, spider webs and planks. The brokers and the broken pass on the street. Acacia leaves swirl up in schools of golden flying fish. Then we see them mashed in porridge in the gutter. In the back room of the library, old wooden card catalogues tilt every which way, their tongues lolling out. An earthquake-stricken city emptied of ideas. As the wooden telephone booth in the marble hall waits for phantoms to ring with news of the other world. Outside, dropped boards clatter to the pavement. A truck clanks over a pothole, its hydraulic brake squawks release. Cars shush by, banks fail. East into morning, 42nd Street is a blinding nickel-plated strip. Water hissed and gurgled all night in the bedroom wall. I made my prayer to Nuestra Señora de la Soledad and dropped Shakti's paperback spiritual guide to self-transformation in the trash with onion peels, melon rinds, tea bags, fish bones, and holiday photos of impeccable children. This book, there's a long poem to Frederick Law Olmsted, the designer and architect of Central Park. And he also left the work on Central Park in 1860, late 61, to go and supervise what became the Red Cross, the Sanitary Commission, to gather the wounded off the battlefields of the Civil War, the northern battlefields of the Civil War, the Union wounded and dead. And I won't read the whole poem, but just what I want you to try to see is Central Park in Manhattan used to be a slaughterhouse and running with the blood of slain animals, and Olmsted went from the blood muck of Central Park that was becoming a park to the blood muck of the battlefields of the Civil War, and the whole poem is about designing a democracy. The idea of Central Park was to make a public space where everyone could go and be ennobled by the idea of public space. And the Civil War was a battle to make a democracy that was inclusive of everybody and that would abolish slavery. I'll read the first section and the last section, hoping not to tax your patience too much. Olmsted loved the philosopher Emerson, and each of my sections has a little quote from Emerson. He kept a copy of Emerson's essays by his bed. The poem is called Earthworks for Frederick Law Olmsted. The first section is Shadows. The way of life is wonderful. It is by abandonment. Emerson. Against icy morning light, the sycamores flex biceps, shrug shoulders, flaunt broad arms, serpent mottled. Hurrah, they shout, or help, or pour down more sun. Disease bunches up in bowls under the skin and cranks the elbows. Malady, we were taught, is picturesque. Hollow trunk, dead arm, drooping bough, wrote Mr. Gilpin, splendid remnants of decaying grandeur. And other mischiefs incident to trees. They fling their shadows wide as archaic pitchforks, prong frozen soil to dislodge 5 million ghostly cubic yards of stone, earth, topsoil hauled to make a park. The park. The central park. The central idea that all, ward healers, dandies, urchins, freed slaves, desperados, gents and ladies, the halt, the swift, the lame, might come, might be drawn forth in courtesy, might harmonize. Democracy is space in which we flow. The shadows strike back to the house in Hartford, curtains drawn in daylight around the mother sunk in quilts, no longer breathing in the laudanum gloom, and the small boy hardly breathing by the bed. Roots boil up in dragon coils from rock-hard earth, elm, Norway maple, pin oak, honey locust, hickory, clutch, and bunch secrets wrenched from below, where the mother lies in metamorphic dark. Bedrock, mica schist at the core, littered above with clay and gravel, gouged by glacier, shot with granite dikes where magma probed and cooled. No account kept of expenses from February 24 to March 12, wrote Father, the merchant. Tuesday, February 28, at 5:30 p.m., my dear wife died. And next April, married, $10. The shadows press child after child into the shale pages of the Book of Earth. Charlotte, measles, aged 4. Owen, aged 2. Ada, age 6 of bilious colic. Her moans and cries have been heart-rending, writes young Fred, anthologist of shadows. The great principle of art, breadth of light and shadows, counsels Sir Uvedale Price, for whom the eye should not be stopped and harassed by little disunited, discordant parts. Nor is democracy little discordant parts. Rhododendron, azalea, rhodora, sweet gum, spice bush, green ash, Siberian elm. The essence, says Price, is connection. Olmsted and Vaux loop tableland and meadow, hill, hollow, rock, reservoir, lake and brook, east, west, north, south, above, below, in paths, roads, drives, and bridges cresting. Build in solidest granite that the span may loft across the death of Brother John, ghostwriter, confidant, comrade, closest soul, choked by tuberculosis far in southern France. Dear, dear Fred, it appears we are not to see one another anymore. I am wild with opium. I cannot comprehend this suddenness, but I see it. I have no breath. Don't let Mary suffer while you are alive. Price. Twilight connects what was before scattered. It fills up staring, meager vacancies. It destroys edginess, and by shadow as well as light to water, it increases its brilliance and softness. Evening dissolves opal and mother of pearl across the reservoir, silences commissioners, bosses, office seekers, first citizens, journalists, bankers. Small waves lisp and suck at the rim of blue ice. The widgeon tucks an emerald cheek under his wing and drifts toward sleep as shade encumbers the elms. The widgeon is a kind of duck. I'm going to skip to the short last one. What I hope when you walk in Central Park now, you'll think about Olmsted and think about the man who had us all in mind as he built this incredible public space, and that it's precious, a gracious and noble public space that's for everyone. Hollows. Free to draw his own conclusions and to stroll among hawthorn, persimmon, and spindle trees in the ramble, he designed in order to lose himself, so that others might lose themselves, might be weaned from debasing pursuits and brutalizing pleasures. He meanders off hours, free for a spell from drafting table, memoranda, and orders for new parks, free from his father's gentle dying, from Tammany commissioners and the spoils of the park. He kicks through folios of fallen leaves and their whispered obituaries. Where the path dips, it might be Avernus, that hulking shade, Lincoln, whose frankness and courageous directness he'd finally seen. That tremor by the ash tree, that rustle in the underbrush, Owen, his son, dead at 24. A chill in the air, an iron taste, an early dusk as boughs strip down, Pages flutter to earth. His thousands of joyless, laborious sheets, lines spaced far apart for his interlinear corrections and corrections of corrections, until the space between the lines, the margins, and even the back of the page are crowded with his crabbed and hasty script. Neuralgia, insomnia, his impracticable temper and irritable brain never followed straight lines. The clubs, Century, Union League, Saturday Club, the Nation Editorial Board, sift into compost. The granite ledge presses moist into his palm. Spine of the park, a rock with its own constitution, its own amendments, lends itself only partly to his designs. His work everywhere arrested, wrenched, mangled, and misused, a mortification. Branches lopped, roads rammed through, meadows, and that excessive materialism of purpose in which we as a people are so cursedly absorbed, absorbs park after park, Brooklyn, Boston, Buffalo. He stands in shade, the sociable man beyond society, where the brain puckers in gulches and hollows and solitude is perfected. He made a shape for the errant soul, the hidden life, the refugee, a reverie beyond the touch of wife, son, nephew, fame, doctors, the firm's future, beyond the gaze of the painter who sees him as white-bearded, benevolent sage of capitalist rhododendrons. Dementia has its own genius. He essays a path into the rock's deep crevices and disappears. He barely disturbs the litter of leaves. We should not know him, but as our season darkens, we still walk in the privacy he traced for us, and the sycamores ravel a canopy of cloud with knowing fingers over our heads. Poem. Hospital chair. I carry a whistle in my pocket to guard against assault. At the end of the notebook, under politics, only a blank, through which my mother walks, almost blind, carrying ginger snaps, apples, and stuffed bears for my children. Her smile girlish, vulnerable, the rage sublimed away. The pain as well, from when I hurried her in the metro and she fell and gashed her leg to the bone, or when her sister died and she howled like a coyote with its paw in a trap. Soul-shattering, inhuman. Whose rage? My own, I think, though it was she who cursed the English girl as she kneeled and wept, scrubbing the tub, she who excommunicated guests from the dinner table, she, the child, huddling with her sister under a snowdrift, caught by a blizzard on their way home from the country school, the child abandoned in a French convent where she ate lard and nearly died of whooping cough. And months after her death, she appeared to me in a dream, no longer wheezing from emphysema, no longer blind, striding in her silk turquoise dress across a distant lawn, a lawn that kept drifting backward, to tell me that night in the hospital, as I half slept in a cramped chair by my young child's bed, that Catherine would not die. Diamonds. At midnight, the jewelry store mannequins proffer their bare necks, headless, torso-less, just the swoop of collarbone and upper chest with a meager swelling toward breasts in chill street light. Now they've achieved purity. Now, without distracting diamonds or the small polluted algae pools of emeralds, they soar. Love is a theorem, and what we proved is not what we paid for, though the ATMs keep spitting out bills and a rat-tat-tat of chattering teeth. In those pictures you took, The thigh carves a perfect arc against the thicket at the mouth of the cave, and flesh pleats illegibly. If it's a god who touches us when we lose ourselves, he's the briefest of flashbulbs. The image cannot endure. I shone in your arms blindly. Blindly you cried out in the electrochemical light. We leave a burn on the air. Morning hauls us. Morning with crinkled eyelids, abdominal creases, and enlarged pores. Gingerly we test our heaviness, feet on the floor. Gingerly we hold our balance on this spinning crust of soil. I live in the summers in the south of France in a big town, a university town. And actually I want to read you two from that town. Don't worry, they're not long. And there's some very bored teenagers in that town. I've been observing them. Here they are. There are bored teenagers all over the place. Have you noticed? July. Under the cliff walls of apartment blocks, on a narrow patch of grass as tough and discolored as old carpet, they've parked their motorbikes and distributed themselves. A tribe, a colony, girls and boys. Some lounged on the sward, some on cement paving in a strip of shade, some on two facing wrought iron benches planted in concrete. Out of range of grown-ups, they play cards, they scuffle. A girl places her head on a boy's lap to practice kissing. They smoke, they pass lit cigarettes back and forth. A smaller boy pops a soccer ball against the wall with slow, heat-drugged, sidewise kicks. Hours pass. Cigarettes burn down. Where am I? The ball thuds and shadows lengthen across concrete from 4 cypresses and 6 anorexic ginkgos. Day is endless. Summer is endless. Their throats sweetly sear. They drink Coke and toss the plastic bottles on the grass. This place, for now, is theirs. They can throw what they want. Their lungs are their own to burn. Their limbs loll in the loosened harmony of dancers at rest. They can pick themselves up when they want. And this is really the last poem. It's called Sans domicile fixe, which is the French bureaucratic jargon for the homeless. And there are a lot of what I call the new homeless in France, who are young people, or youngish. Some of them are actually young middle-aged people, but they're traveling in tribes, and they have a very distinct uniform, kind of military, slightly punkish. They have big, scary dogs, and they sleep out, and they're very organized. And France the whole world is a very unsettled place right now. Have you noticed? People are unhappy. So this is about not having a fixed place to live or a sense of security. Sans domicile fixe. Clouds like boulders. Boulders like petrified clouds that rolled down and stalled in the meadow. That was yesterday. Now we're in the centripetal apartment with peonies aging in 2 vases, pink and cream petals frizzling into crepe. Mirrors multiply the years. I see you seeing me in the gilt-framed oval by the desk. I see us both in the window reflected in the closet door glass. My eye corners crease. Flecks of dark chocolate streak the inner spines of all the books. Words are drugs. Love is a drug, while Europe contracts into dark burgundy upholstery and cushions. Deep in the French-English dictionary, 3 asterisks mark extreme vulgarity. How long can we stay here? Outside, the new homeless twist dreadlocks and pace their mastiffs. Tattoos bulge on their forearms. Paper wrappers and crushed cans clot the gutter. sun leaps off the roof tiles. A brisk sea wind. In the mountains, those small purple flowers with pods and curling tendrils. Now you tell me, were vetch. Thank you.
Our tradition here at Nyack is to present the speaker with a poster, a framed poster of the event, so you can remember us. So please. I would like to ask you to, as a way of encore, I usually don't ask this, but would you read the title poem?
If they can bear it.
Yeah, just one more poem, please, for me.
This was a ghost story, so I read you the first ghost poem, which is about my mother, and the last ghost you'll see at the end of the book. Ghost in a red hat. These cabbages under full sail, these ancient walls smothered in ivy and wisteria with its purple froth. In my middle age and sensible girth, I remember starving. I didn't know why. I practiced being a ghost. I was a girl. I thought this was how one became a woman. I lived in a village in Italy. It was picturesque. I was not picturesque. That was the project. I gnawed stale bread, roamed vineyards and olive groves, drew portraits of artichoke plants under twisted trees, recited Petrarch, and grew so thin I was a dazzling knife blade in my new white pants. The old grandmother quietly cursed in a corner. Her family ignored her. They ignored me. I recited more Petrarch and bought a broad-brimmed crimson straw hat. What to do with this girl? She learned to survive long spells of dryness. She embraced strangers, and they stayed strange. She painted still lifes, and they stayed still. She had dreamed she attended a soiree at a Soho loft where the main dish on a platter, garnished with parsley, was a woman's naked torso, roasted, belly down, crisply hot. She looked for the small flame guttering in a sacred jar. Giving birth was one way. Holding a dying man's hand was another. She buried small animals with appropriate rites in the backyard. And here are the generations. Water and fire begat turpentine, which joined earth and brought forth color from mineral loins and boiled down vegetable soul. So steeped and soaked this land where I live now, so rushing in rain, roof tiles bristle in moss, close woven or feathery, sprigging with spores. The cemetery teems, lichen, honeysuckle, roses, little mildewed photographs under glass. Enemies make peace. Centuries fall through limestone cracks. And Edith came up the street this morning to bring me Le Monde and La Revue des Deux Mondes and a packet of fresh goat cheese before setting out in rain on her drive to the Dordogne. Thank you very, very much.